I would see people giving this remedy and then this remedy and then this remedy and this remedy because they're so uncomfortable that the person is uncomfortable. You're amplifying something. Fevers are our friends. The fever comes up to burn something out. Let it do its job. You don't have to change the remedy. You don't have to give an acute remedy, a different one every 3 hours. Give the same remedy, the one that you can see through, to pierce through with direct perception, and trust. Trust the field. Trust the homeopathic medicine. Also trust the space. This is a core teaching at the Prometheus Homeopathic Institute, not in this lofty or esoteric sense, but in the most practical way of how do we hold space without clinging? How do we name what is real? How do we work with presence to feel the force, right? And to go with it. And how to let go of needing to be the healer so that we can awaken the patient's inner healer. That's what we're here. We're in this collaborative process to awaken the patient's inner healer. And so if we do our job well, we are also transformed. So we want to be curious more than certain. We want to be relational more than transactional or efficient. We want to be willing to make mistakes. Like, let the patient teach you. Don't be the one who knows. If you know, like, it's so absurd to think that we know. Give the remedy, be curious, see what happens, but wait. Like, don't change the remedy because the thing you think needed to change didn't change. Wait. Why? Because
today's guest is Jay Norbu, professionally known as Jason-Aeric Huenecke. Jay Norbu is the co-founder of the Prometheus Homeopathic Institute. Now, you may have noticed our back-to-back episodes because yesterday we featured Desiree Brazelton, who is the other co-founder of Prometheus Homeopathic Institute. So Jay Norbu is also a master prover. Now, I have a cool story to tell about this because about a year ago, my lovely homeopath prescribed me a remedy which has really helped me on a very profound level and still continues to do so. We changed remedies halfway through, but then ended up coming back to this one because it has helped me so much in more ways than I can ever say. And it just so happens that it actually is one of the remedies that Jay Norbu was responsible for proving. So I have a personal, huge gratitude to him. So you can find out more about his provings at thefieldprovings.org. And you can also visit jasonaeric.com. That's jasonaeric.com to learn about Jay Norbu's astrological spiritual guidance that he offers. You can also visit PrometheusHomeopathicinstitute.com for more information about his school. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the Homeopathy Hangout podcast, where we discuss all things homeopathy from around the world. And now our mum and your host, Eugenie Kruger.
Hello, homies, and welcome back to Homeopathy Hangout, where we have a super lovely guest for you today. We are speaking with Jay Norbu, who is also professionally known as Jason-Aeric Huenecke, and I've probably said that wrong now. Jay Norbu, welcome to the podcast.
thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh my gosh, it's just so lovely to have you on. I also got to chat with Desiree, Rebecca, and Meredith, who I'm actually piggybacking your episode. So her episode is going to come out yesterday for our listeners, but actually it was a few weeks ago. So we're going to have the one episode after the other because you're all from Prometheus Homeopathic Institute, and I just thought it'd be nice for our listeners to kind of have them back to back. But I'm going to ask you the question I ask everyone on the podcast, which is, how did you first discover homeopathy?
Well, as a child, I was otherworldly, precocious, and circling my being. Most of my childhood, I walked on my tiptoes. I had difficulty reading and feeling everything. And so my early childhood, I pretty much vomited every morning before I went to school, ailments from anticipation. But I had asthma and allergies, and I developed migraine headaches. And I went to a neurologist, and they said, well, it's not possible for you to have migraine headaches. You don't have a menstrual cycle. And I thought, what is that? And what's interesting is my mother had migraine headaches. My grandfather, her father had migraine headaches, and his mother had migraine headaches. So I understood something that this is inherited in some way. And I worked at the James Jerome Hill Reference Library, and there were 2 women with multiple sclerosis, and one found a homeopathic practitioner. And I was age 18. I was 17 years old. I got on the homeopath's waiting list, and I was on 8 allopathic medications and on weekly allergy shots throughout my childhood. And I went off of I dumped them all. I stopped everything, and my body like went into this terrible rebound effect where I was just like vomiting like mucus and, just phlegm was pouring out of me. All the things that it was holding back, the floodgates opened. And so I called on my birthday in March of 1990 and got in to see the homeopath in September of 1990. And that those 6 months were just treacherous in the sense of, going through like really a healing crisis, having taken away the suppression of the medications. And the woman homeopath took my case and she prescribed phosphorus 1 m, one single dose in a little white envelope, which I still have somewhere here in my collection
Really?
of.
Oh.
And I took the remedy, and the most amazing thing happened. I suddenly felt like I had a body, which I realized I've never been in this vehicle. I had never really been in this vehicle for the previous 18 years. So I want to say, with all due respect to individuals who want to prescribe incarnation remedies, that what is an incarnation remedy? It is any one of the 7,999 remedies that bring you back to your body. It is not necessarily the matrodonal remedies, for example, or the milk remedies or the magnesiums, right? The incarnation remedy is the one that brings you home, back to your true nature. So I took that remedy, phosphorus 1 m, and on my normal migraine headaches it would start and peak in a week and a half. Major, like, I'd be in my bedroom with a pillow over my head, blanket, many, many, many blankets, like pillows surrounding me to try to clear out the psychic noise, that I was picking up in my surroundings. And I could hear water dripping, in the house, or, like all sounds were so magnified and light. I was so photosensitive. And then it would descend, so it was like I had migraines about 3 weeks every month for my childhood. And scents and sounds, I've told our students that if I would walk by fresh cut grass, literally the gravity would pull me to the ground. I would be like taken to the ground. I was so sensitive to fresh cut grass. And to me, it was like every little blade of grass was crying out, when it was being cut and then releasing its essence and so on. And the thing that I tell our students at the Prometheus Homeopathic Institute, and I've mentored about 50 homeopaths since I started practicing, really, over the last 23 years. I tell them that how I got into homeopathy and how so my migraines were cured in 5 weeks. She gave me the single dose, and instead of the week and a half, it was 2.5 weeks, and it was horrible. And also I felt like more and more embodiment and more density. Of course, vomiting up gallons of mucus every day, like you don't gain weight. Like throwing up your breakfast when it settles in your stomach every day, you don't gain weight. So I began to have density, but metabolism shifting and all that. And then it took me an additional 10 years to really cure my allergies and 5 more years to cure my asthma. And, there are 2 types of asthma. There is a dry asthma and a gunky asthma. And I had the gunky, mucusy, phlegmy, kind of asthma. And so I literally threw up like gallons of mucus, not in the morning after eating, but just in the evening, after midnight or just before midnight for the last 5 years. And what was interesting about that time, because I was in homeopathy school at that time, is that many of my colleagues, my classmates, and many of the other homeopathic teachers kept saying, you shouldn't be going through this. You shouldn't be suffering like this. That's not true. There are times when we actually need to undo the suppression, that we need to allow ourselves to go through the natural healing process. And so this is a path that may differ from some of your listeners, that because there's many people that feel like you shouldn't have to suffer, but I don't actually agree with that. I think some suffering is the clearing of your life force, your karma, the miasmatic layers, etc., etc.
I'm really
That's a
glad that you
long-winded
brought
answer.
No, I'm really glad that you've brought that. You've actually brought a couple of things up that I've kind of been sitting with, and one of them is what we would call aggravations, because I've always come with classical training. We're like, yep, there's an aggravation. Then you're kind of going through that clearing, and then from interviewing so many guests, I respect everybody's point of view because we're all seeing everything from a different angle, and the reality is there's so many different people that we need to treat. So it's good that we all see things from a different angle, because if you are somebody that needs to clear with aggravations and symptoms coming out, then you will find a practitioner that is good at holding space for you with that. And if you're somebody that not, maybe you go and find a different, practitioner. Like energetically, you'll be drawn to those people, because I believe the same, that I don't think healing is always going to be just smooth sailing because I'm like, well, how's the body going to get out what it needs to get out? Like it does that through,
Yeah.
purging or diarrhea or sweat or
Yeah.
whatever. It needs to create homeostasis. And if it's like, it's beautiful if it can be gentle. Of course, we all want that. But if I think of the times in my life where I have like mental, emotionally healed and learned and gone through stuff, it's always been a bit of a tough journey, like a conflict happens in your life and then it's really tough and you're sitting and it's really hard and you work through it and then you come out the other end. So when I've learned big insights in my life, it's never just come easy. And I think that
Yeah.
physically it's not always going to be easy. Of course, that's what we want because we don't like to suffer, but I don't know that it's always going to be that easy. So I'm glad that you've brought that up.
Yeah, and I want to say I'm not taking like the Messiah complex, like having to, be crucified kind of idea in the sense of like, and I mean no disrespect, but I don't mean that like some suffering is necessary. And I think the term aggravation ought to be amplification.
That's a much better word.
When we teach this concept, I don't tell any of my people that come to me for healing that I don't tell them about aggravations, honestly. I say, let's see what happens, So there's like some basic principles that I like operate out of, where I encourage walking the path of healing with love, curiosity, and wonder. And before I ever opened a Materia Medica or the Organon, I wished that I would have been told that the first remedy is love. That the kind of love that like a mother's unconditional loving presence that stays with you when things get uncomfortable and that sits with contradiction or paradox, right? And holds space even you're when you're screaming, or like trying to navigate or negotiate an obstacle or a block or some kind of pain.
That's beautiful. I love that slogan for Prometheus Homeopathic School as well. The first remedy is love. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Mm. Is there anything? Well, actually, first, I just have to say the fact that at 16 years old you were working in the library, that's pretty impressive in itself. I don't know how many 16-year-olds would would choose to do that.
Well, I applied for a job as a page, and then they began to automate the library that James J. Hill was the empire builder. He created a railroad system across the United States. So he was around in the early 1900s, when homeopathy was really coming up in the United States. And at any road, I helped automate their card catalog. I literally typed in
Like the
thousands,
titles.
yeah, like thousands of little
Really?
like index cards,
Wow.
card catalogs into the system to automate it because and this was in the 1988, 89.
Wow. What a valuable job. I mean, that's incredible. Were you reading a lot as well?
Oh, I read everything. I had difficulty reading as a child, but I read everything that I could get my hands on.
Mm.
When I left my homeopathic appointment, the homeopath gave me two books, George Vitolkas's Science of Homeopathy and James Tyler Kent's The Philosophy, Lectures on Homeopathic Philosophy.
Yeah.
And I read each one of those. I read the George Vitolkas's book 11 times. I read each of those. I read his book once a year for 11 years, and I read James Tyler Kent's book twice a year for 11 years before I went to homeopathy school.
Wow.
So,
What was it
yeah.
about those books that made you read them over and over?
Well, that was about it. That's all that I could find. And I really, something about, well, one, in the beginning of Vitolkas's books, he talks about the Sumerian, there's a little blurb about the Sumerian book of knowledge, like your body as a temple, and then, or something to that extent. And James Tyler Kent, his book is full of Swedenborgian mysticism and Hermetica and alchemy. But most people don't know that, and it's controversial. People get upset about it, when I mention these kind of mystical underpinnings of what we're doing. But that's where I live and breathe and have my being. So I love your openness to all ways. And, I wanted to understand, what does this mean from center to circumference and the whole economy and all these kinds of early 1900s words?
Can you tell me a little bit about the Tibetan Buddhism as well? You've got astrology and you've got all these incredible modalities
Yes.
that you weave into what it is that you do.
So I was raised in a Lutheran home as a child and was very spiritually religiously oriented and wanted to become Lutheran minister, and we grew up in a Catholic and Jewish neighborhood. We were the only Protestant family in a Catholic and Jewish neighborhood. And eventually, when I was a teenager, around the same time that I found homeopathy, I met Pema Chodron, who is a Tibetan Buddhist, and she was teaching Tonglen, which is about taking the practice of taking on another person's suffering so that they can be relieved of their suffering, like literally taking it in. And, in one of her teachings, she teaches that you imagine the person is filled with black smoke and you breathe it in and you breathe out, like you breathe out to them the love and kindness and, bodhicitta, awakened heart. And so breathe into them the awakened heart, and then you take on their suffering so that they don't have to go through it. And so the first round is really thick black smoke that you absorb, and then you breathe out, like a lesser gray smoke. Then you breathe in the gray smoke and you breathe out a white smoke until it's clear. And then if you keep clearing, eventually it moves to the rainbow body or some kind of energy, like a rainbow crystalline essence. And so Pema Chodron was my first teacher, and then Robert Thurman, Tenzin who was one of the first Americans to become a monk under the Dalai Lama, who's just about to turn 90 on the 6th of July. But Tenzin or Robert Thurman, he became my second teacher. I found his book called The Jewel Tree of Tibet. And so I found his book and then CD, like a 9 or 11 CD set, and I just listened to it, and listened. And I listened to Pema's teachings from Sounds True over and over and over and over again. And to me, the teachings of Jesus Christ and Buddhism, they go hand in hand. That is not true for many people in the world. But I'm very open spiritually, and I believe that there is many ways to open your heart. Then in 2012, I met my current spiritual teacher, whose name is Lama Sultram from Tara Mandala, and one of her senior students in the Magyu, Magyu lineage, which is the mother lineage of Tibetan Buddhism. And I've just been blessed. I do my practices every morning. I wake up at 4:01 a.m. I prepare myself. I go outside, whether it's today it was 69 degrees, Fahrenheit, but I also go out and do my practices in temperatures of minus 23 below zero Fahrenheit. So I maintain my samaya every day. I do my practices every day. And I worked with the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet at St. Catherine University. I worked there, which is a Catholic it was a college, now it's a university. It was a college when I was there, but I worked for them. And so I completed 3 undergraduate degrees because they gave me my education free. So I have like one of the longest transcripts in the history of a Catholic women's college. And I studied anthropology, holistic health studies, and psychology. So the Tibetan Buddhism, so my name, J Norbu, is a shortened name of my refuge name, Ningje Norbu, which means the jewel of the awakened heart, which when you receive a refuge name, is an aspirational, it's an aspirational name to live into and to grow into. And so the jewel of the awakened heart means, to find the remedy, the jewel for whomever it is. What is the wish-fulfilling jewel for Eugenie or her family or friends? Or do you follow what I mean?
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's something that's kind of propelling you forward. You have that goal of living into that or like aspiring to it, and it's kind of holds you true, like a north on the compass, kind of keeps you on that direction. That's beautiful. We could go any direction right now, right? Like I feel like I could ask you anything and we're going to get some jewels given to us, jewels of wisdom. Is there an area that you want to go into? Because I see a lovely homeopath in America. I'm not going to say her name because she's in her 80s, and if I say, everyone's going to want to book with her, and I don't think she's going to be happy with me. But she's amazing. She almost a year ago now, she gave me a remedy that I hadn't heard of, which was one that you proved. And that remedy has been so helpful to me in my life. And then 2 months ago, we decided to change the remedy slightly. And I just went downhill, and I messaged her and I was like, I'm sorry, I have to go back on this, on this remedy that Jane Norbu created, because that is like my true constitutional remedy, I feel. And it just brings me back. And that remedy's been like a guidance for me because it makes me dream. So I can take it before I go to bed, and I know I'm going to have a really revealing dream. And so we had
Yeah.
a follow-up yesterday, actually, and the night before I took the remedy, and I said, if there's something that you want me to tell my homeopath, please let me know. And I had this really wacky dream, and I told her, and then she's like, oh, you need this remedy next. So it's like just a noser that we're going to throw in, and then we'll go back on that remedy. But firstly, I just want to say thank you so much for creating this beautiful remedy. It's helped me
You're
so
welcome.
much. You've created several remedies, so I won't say what it is, otherwise
Yeah.
everyone's going to want to take it, and it's not necessarily going to be their remedy.
Yes.
But I would love to talk about your provings because you have proved some really cool stuff. Do you want to
Yeah.
do like a little rundown of some of the ones that you've done?
Sure. Well, let's see. Where shall we begin?
You did Prometheus as well, hey, and Black Hole
Yes.
and Oedipus. Let's
Yes.
start with Black Hole. We'll just blow people's minds straight from the
Okay.
beginning, and then we'll go
So,
from there.
yes, the black hole remedy.
Oh, I love it. Love it.
This is Cygnus X1, or this is the Cygnus quadrant, and the black hole is right here somewhere. Let's see. Right here, I think. At any rate.
Anybody watching on Rumble, you can have a bit of a visual. YouTube deleted my channel exactly a year ago with all 300 videos, and I'm busy getting them all
Really?
back. So, yeah, for medical misinformation. So, I don't actually like to say YouTube, but I'll put
Oh,
them back there. But go watch on Rumble, rumble.com.
we can redo it. So this is a,
Oh, you can leave it there. That was cool.
what's it called? Okay.
Yeah, I love it.
All right. So first of all, I've done about 20 provings,
Wow.
and I participated in 5 others with other homeopathic practitioners, and I've done many triturations. And the way I do provings is that I take and I get the substances, like people make requests, would you please do a proving of this? And like many well-known homeopaths will call and say, will you please do a proving of thus and such? And I tell them, I'm happy to do that, but the way I do it is that it has to, I put them in, they're triple blinded so that I don't know what the person's taking. They don't know, the prover doesn't know, the supervisors don't know, no one knows. So we often have like 13 substances that are labeled, with codes and such. And so this one was selected, and it was remarkable because what are we actually doing? It pushes us to the very edge of belief and disbelief. And like, this is an imponderable, which means this was a remedy prepared by Rowan Jackson, an amateur astronomer, where they put medicating liquid on the end of a super telescope and pointed it in the direction of the exact coordinates of the Cygnus X1. And this kind of brings me to like the idea or the notion that of Rupert Sheldrake's morphogenic fields and embodied mind and consciousness, and that stars have consciousness. Our sun has consciousness, the earth, minerals, all these things have their own kind of consciousness, not the same kind of human consciousness that we have, but a kind of consciousness. So that when we are looking out at the stars, our sun, it's actually looking back at us in its own way. And this is what I'm like working on. I'm thinking that actually, like, there are many benefits of classical homeopathy, but I think that we're moving beyond that system. And I've termed it neoclassical homeopathy, but I think it could also be called integral homeopathy. But the Cygnus X1, which is also called Lux 4 minus nigris, the black hole, one of the supervisors began like having all these strange symptoms. So as a master prover, I talked to the supervisors and asked them to like explore this or that more in what the prover is going through, or like get clear on what this is. And of course, I'm reading all the proving notes as they come in, and I can see the language of the life force of the substance speaking through the provers and what the experience of the supervisors is. One of the provers was lying in bed and saw a black undulating nebula above her bed. And I thought, now this is interesting. She saw this, basically, what's behind me on the screen here, the auric field. And just so you know, like this kind of, whenever you see these NASA photographs, they are like mandalas. Like these are like deities or like, teachings from space in and of themselves. And so even meditating on a mandala or on a religious icon can elicit a state that alters your being, albeit temporarily, if it's the right resonance. So at any rate, this remedy is absolutely spectacular. And lately I've been developing this concept of the homeopathic world from hydrogenium to Lux Flora minus nigris. Do you follow what I mean? Many people are trying to fit everything onto the
Sorry,
periodic.
I'm nodding as if I do, but I don't. Please do
Okay.
elaborate.
Well, what I'm noticing,
I'm trying really hard to hold,
yeah,
like,
I'm sorry if I'm talking
no,
out
no, do you
loud.
know, Jane Oliver, this is what, it's only the second time we've ever chatted, but I can tell that you have so much information and you're trying really hard to break it down for normal people to understand. And this is what I feel like when I when I talk to Paul Terrio as well, who coincidentally I'm interviewing straight after you. And I was saying the two of you need to meet, although he said that you have just
We
recently
just met.
spoken. Yeah, he said that you have, because I messaged him
Yeah.
last night going, oh, it's so funny. I'm interviewing you straight after Jane Orbu. That's the same feeling I get with him. Is like, he knows so much and he's trying really hard to make normal people understand. But I feel I can just like sit here at your feet and just absorb this information. And I'm hoping some of it, kind of makes sense. But sorry,
Well,
all that
there
to
should be,
say,
you should receive some kind of transmission from it.
I
I really
am. I
believe
can
that.
feel it. I
Um,
absolutely am.
yeah. So, so if I'm going on and on, please interrupt me and just
Well, I'm
so.
going to do what you do and re-listen to this podcast episode every year for 11 years. And then hopefully
Yeah,
it'll sink in.
yeah. Yeah, so I think that we ought to abandon the periodic table in its like penitentiary kind of cells, the little cells. We need to let that go and utilize the spiral periodic table. And so in this reimagined spiral periodic table, which is similar to, can you see the
Ah,
tiny little,
yeah. Oh,
uh,
it's like a little fossil.
yeah, it's a little fossil, but
Yeah.
this is this is the symbol for phi. It is a nautilus shell cut in half.
I love Nautilus. That was actually the emblem of the
Yes.
school that I went to. And the slogan was always wider and higher. And it was the Nautilus and it's on our
Yeah.
shirts. I love the idea of the Nautilus.
So this is the concept of the spiral, the reimagined spiral periodic table, where the elements and remedies, their substances do not simply ascend into atomic number or valency, but unfurl like the whorls of a conch shell or the spiraling arms of the Milky Way, right? So like the way we teach at Prometheus Homeopathic Institute is through the mythopoetic, that your language, the words that you use have meaning. And we don't teach in a linear way. We teach in the spiral learning method where we give a little amuse-bouche and then come back for the, main course, right? Again and again to have the feast of the kaleidoscopic materia medica over time. And so the spiral periodic table is not like a penitentiary, it's not hierarchical, but it is the dance of emergence. And this is what we are aiming for in the longitudinal, helping people over time from birth to death, right? To have their dance of emergence where substance, vibration, resonance, and consciousness cycle through these stages of condensation and dissolution. And hydrogenium is not the beginning, and lux four minus nigris is not the end, but they are thresholds, right? This is where the linear penitentiary table arranges by mass and electrons. The spiral table that I'm reimagining arranges by imponderability, the degree to which a substance resists containment in mass or measure. Right. And so one of the examples of how we teach hydrogenium is to think about other things that are similar to it, like phosphorus, right? Phosphorus, hydrogenium, lux four minus nigris, right? And I did a proving of a remedy. One of my more recent provings was Aqua Glacier Antarctica, which has qualities of tempesta, of plutonium nitricum, of hydrogenium, of lux four minus nigris, and oxygenium and ozonum in it, because the Antarctica is where it's like the bottom of the washer, where the world's oceans are coming and taking all of our toxins and regenerating, healing, in this amazing way. So
Wow.
the spiral, yes, wow, right? It's like
Yeah.
the spiral periodic table is also one that is based on radiance. That remedies they are like little photons, right? They have the capacity to illuminate the darkness in which we walk, to lift remedies. Substances, when proven, become remedies, right? A substance is not a remedy until it is potentized and it moves. We dare to taste and we take it in and allow it to live and move and have its being through us, and we let it speak. So in that way, provings are like an oracular exercise, a shamanic exercise. And so we want to lift the distortions and lift the obscurations and be able to navigate obstacles. We can't eliminate them completely. Some of us have anatomical changes from injuries, from birth defects, from, surgeries, so on and so forth. The remedy's not going to change that, but we can move the life force, the light, the radiance, so that you and I can unfurl like the whirls of a conch shell in the spiraling arms of the Milky Way and move into this dance of emergence, into unbounded sway. Now, I will tell you that some of our more stuffed shirt homeopathic colleagues will say, Hahnemann did not mean that we are moving into unbounded sway, but that the life force, the vital force, the Wesen, moves into unbounded sway. Well, I don't agree. I live in the mythopoetic world where I want to move through the dance of emergence and live in unbounded sway, right?
I love how you light up when you talk about this. You can see that this is your passion. It's beautiful.
Or it's my madness. At the Prometheus Homeopathic Institute, we do 2 retreats a year, and one of our retreats is down the rabbit hole is the Alice in Wonderland. And so, at the Mad Hatter's tea party, the Mad Hatter says, all of us are mad here.
Actually, you've got one coming up in Greece, I think, in October, isn't it?
Yes. In the beginning of September, we're taking a group of brave-hearted individuals to visit the ancient sites and to take a deep dive into different remedies that are related to these ancient Greek gods and the surroundings. We go to Delphi and the Parthenon and the Temple of Poseidon. It's just wonderful. And so we're trying to, I really wanted to say this. I am not a homeopathic practitioner. I live homeopathically. Do you understand the difference? That is the goal. How can I live with mirror-like wisdom, polishing my own heart's mirror to see you and reflect back to you what is needed for you to live and move and have your being and your dance of emergence and your ability to be in unbounded sway.
I think that needs to be on a t-shirt.
Well,
Can we get some t-shirts printed with that?
So good at that. Miss Desiree is so good at that.
I love it.
So my spiral periodic table lecture that I just gave you is, it involves quantum theory, astrophysics, homeopathy, imponderables, light, magnetism, gravity, antimatter, the bend of the spiral, right? Dark stars, the Polaris, right?
Amazing. Do you do any post-grad programs? Because I'm just wondering, can I go and enroll in Prometheus?
We would like to. I would like to do that. I'd like to take the lid off. I want to have these kinds of conversations.
I think you need to make that happen.
Hydrogenium is the first breath. It's primordial lightness, the cosmic womb, prajna paramita, the heart sutra, right? From this all arises singularity unwinding and awareness without separation. And we have helium, innocence of expansion. And shall I join them or shall I stay up here? This childlike unfolding. And so we teach, from the ancient wisdom teachings, be childlike, not childish. In the book of Jeremiah said, put away childish things and allow yourself to mature. But we must, the Christ said, you must be like a child in order to enter the kingdom of heaven. And what that means is that a lot of what we're doing in homeopathy is we're meeting someone who is in a kind of hell realm. And so the substance has to match that. So I also teach about, this 3-legged stool concept of the Pythia of the Delphic oracle, where the oracle, wraps one of her legs around one of the legs of the 3-legged stool, and then she goes where the querent, the person who comes with the question or the suffering or the concern, and she allows them to take her on a journey, just like we do as practitioners. And so it can't be our agenda. It has to be their agenda. And the 3-legged stool for us is provings, materia medica, and philosophy. But it's also love, unconditional loving presence, curiosity, and wonder, right? It's also the main 3 miasms. We can go on, but we wrap our leg around one of those legs of the 3-legged stool. And, so I say, if a person is suffering and in hell, you be prepared to go there. And if you haven't gone there yourself, you have to learn how to go there and say, here's the remedy. Take my hand. We're going to walk back out together. And then they may fly away, flip-flop, disappear, dissolve, burst into flame. be taken somewhere else in some mythopoetic way. But then we watch and follow and give the next indicated remedy and keep our leg wrapped around that stool so we can come back to ourselves at the end of the day. And then,
Wow.
yeah, I'm going on and on. I'm giving you my short
It's
course, and
I
yeah,
feel like your transmission is like a healing in itself. And I'm so happy when I think of our listeners who are going to be listening to this and all the little, popcorns that's going to be going off in their minds and all the journeys that your wisdom will be taking them on and thinking, oh, I didn't think about it that way. I didn't think about it this way. Oh, I need to go explore this. I need to go and explore that.
yes.
I would love if you, depending on how your time's going, I'd love if you can just share a bit more because it's just this is so valuable and this is so healing. I feel like I'm receiving a healing just listening to you. And I know
Well,
our
this,
listeners will as well. Like,
thank
this
you.
is the type of episodes, like when I'm talking to people, I kind of like I see messages and where it's going to go. And it's
Hmm.
funny because I think I've always done it, but I didn't really know it. But now I'm like, I'm seeing it a bit more clearly. And I am kind of seeing where this conversation, once it goes live, is going to go. And I just hope that you're ready for everything that's going to happen because there's so many people right now that's really ready for this next level of information and this next level of exploring
Yeah.
homeopathy and just really like there's really no boundaries. You can take it wherever you
Right.
want and you need to take it wherever you
Yeah.
want to help the people around you. Yeah. Something I would love to know a little bit more about
Yeah.
is just some more of your remedies, like more of your provings.
Oh,
Were there
yes.
any other particular provings that were really near your heart or that you think more homeopaths should know about that they might not know about at the moment?
Well, one of the interesting things is that, as I said, we have this collection of different substances that people have asked to be proven. And when we had many, many provers and supervisors on one time, we had 7 or 9 substances, and Lanthanum metallicum came up as one substance, and the other substance, which we didn't know at the time, was Prometheum muriaticum, which is the namesake of our school. And it's very, very interesting because, of course, Jan Schulten has this beautiful book, but we did a journey with each of these substances, and you can go through and see how it's similar to Jan's work. And many people from India have, they have many talks on like lanthanides, and you can hear how it's similar and how it's dissimilar. Like, it's just beautiful. And then when we had 2 huge groups, we drew Odocoileus virginiana borealis, the white-tailed deer, and Ixodes domini, the carrier of Lyme disease. Like at the same time. So like when this happens, I live in the mystical world. There's an author, an archaeologist, I think he's an archaeology professor from, I think, Oxford, named Chris Gosden, who wrote Magic, a 40,000-year history of magic. And he talks about the 3 traditions of magic, religion, and science. And those are another 3-legged stool, right? And people get like upset when you say something about magic, and especially like there is a whole contingency of people wanting to medicalize and to have homeopathy be accepted by regular medicine and to be covered by health insurance and these things. I do not want to be regulated. I do not want to be managed or told you can only give these remedies because imponderables, we don't even understand what that is, right?
So there's this whole like the magic of it all, like the magic of any of the listeners didn't realize this is obviously blind, completely blind. But
It's
then the fact that
completely,
somebody is
yes.
is being drawn with the deer and the deer ticks.
The
And
groups, the
yeah,
groups, each, like we would divide the groups into 20 people here and 20 people there, or 10 or 15 or whatever here and there with the supervisors. Each prover has a supervisor. And then they like all hold the remedy, and then they like put hashtags on, and then on a little card, and then that's the one that's their substance. Do you see? And I think that's lovely. And it's also like the life force also saying, we want to bring these things out.
the magic of that because it knows that if you do these 2 substances together, the one, one helps you to learn more about the other and they're going to have this
Yeah.
relationship with each other. So, I mean, it's not even strange for us that coincidence would happen, but it's
Yes.
still beautiful when it does.
Yes. So I also did a 3rd lanthanide, which is called Samarium cobaltum magnetisatum, but most people say magneticum. That is an absolutely stunning. Samarium cobaltum magnets they're used in ear pods. They're used in all these kind of technological things, but like lots of children have them in their ears, which is really interesting. But Samarium cobaltum magneticum is an interesting remedy because it's like the human resources manager of the lanthanides. And of course, cobalt has a lot of criminal feelings, like lots of delusions of being a criminal or having committed a crime. So it's, of course, the samarium is the one whom the crime is perpetrated, right? And then the magnet is like drawing, like bringing those together so that the person can be the human reach to manage their own human dysregulation.
Holy moly.
So I'll just say some of the other. So my mentor was a man named Eric Sommerman, who at the end of his life, like when he was meditating and doing spagyrics, and he kind of lost his mind and went and lost his way, and he completed suicide in 2007. And so I took his work and finished had 4 substances, Branta canadensis ovum, which is the Canada goose, and Toledra serpentina ovum, which is the common snapping turtle, and also lac ovinum, which is the sheep's milk. And one of my colleagues had a remarkable Fuchs dystrophy eye cure with the lac ovinum. It's a very spiritual, it's the Lamb of God remedy. It's very beautiful and mysterious. But so I've put his work together, all of my writing. I have over 50 articles published in journals all over, but one is mostly in the American Homeopath.
Have you got them together in a book as well, Jason-Aeric?
Not yet, but someday, hopefully.
I think you need to set that as a project for your students. They need to compile them all for you into a book, because it would be amazing to have that all together.
We're actually going to start a fundraiser to organize the provings. Right now, they're available in Radar Opus and in Synergy, I believe.
Oh, amazing.
But I offer all the proving material for free just as a part of my spiritual contribution. But I need to be able to pay the people who do the collating and the work, because students need help. And so we're going to start a fundraiser, if it's all right for me to say that.
Yes, absolutely. Is how can we help? This is exactly what the podcast is for, to let people know about these things.
The website for this is under construction, but it's called thefieldprovings.org, and I'll give you a list of all that.
Thefieldprovings.org. That is the one where I think I initially found you, because I was like Googling you a couple of years ago, and then it's all in divine timing, because I've been trying to get hold of you for a little while. It's been a couple of years.
I know.
It's such divine timing. I just remember the first time that your name popped up, and I actually think it was Luke Norland. That I just remembered now, because I put out in my podcast Facebook group, like, who should I be interviewing? And I'm sure it was him that had your name there. And I'm like, oh, who's this guy? And it's just been so lovely to, it's just so incredible to get to finally have a chat with you today and just share this. And I think our listeners are just so ready for this information that you have to share. You know how you were saying about you call it neo something or other homeopathy?
Neoclassical homeopathy, yes.
So I feel that there's definitely a place for that, but there's always going to be a need for the real kind of basic classical homeopathy, because we're all developing at such different levels. And so I think it's really important that this side of homeopathy is developed, because there are people that are just, I don't know what the correct spiritual term is for it, but they're just vibrating, I don't know, at a higher level, or their consciousness is expanded, or whatever the correct terminology is for that. And they're the ones that need that type of homeopathy. But there's people who are not ready to go there yet. And, so it's lovely that it's going that way. But I was just thinking for a second, I don't want anybody to listen and go, oh, we don't need classical homeopathy, we only need this. But we need all of it. We need all of it.
Well, this is the thing that I've been realizing, because there are many people that have the right ideas, but they don't understand the classical principles. So people are putting certain remedies together, but there's things that we have to think about. Like, does that occur in nature? Are we putting it together because it's something we need to integrate within ourselves? Like, how are we, I completely agree. And the Prometheus Homeopathic Institute, we're looking for students. Did you ever see the American movie, The Wizard of Oz? In the very beginning, it says the movie is not for the faint of heart. And so we want truth seekers and people who are willing to find their way, who are willing to stumble and fumble and make mistakes and work with growth mindset and not know the answer, and who are willing to put aside the idea that I can practice homeopathy like an allopath, giving this for that and that for this, without seeing the gestalt, or understanding that this is about helping a person into individuation, into their dance of emergence. So my first homeopathic teacher was Edward Christopher Whitmont. He wrote a book called Dreams, Portals to the Source, and The Alchemy of Homeopathy and the Substance of Homeopathy. And he was a Jungian analyst and a student of Jung's. And I studied with him just before he died.
I was going to say, because I thought he was like, when you said that you studied under him, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that
I was a teenager.
Oh, wow.
So my colleagues are like at Prometheus or Phi are saying, "Oh, please keep it grounded." But we had this little co-op called Mississippi Market, and I was in shopping, and this tiny Jewish woman that looked like she was from another world grabbed my arm when I was looking at this bulletin board, and I saw a little red flyer that said Homeopathy and Individuation, a course by Edward Christopher Whitmont in Peru, Vermont at Johnny Seesaw's. And I thought, I'm going to go there. And this little woman, and I saw on her arm, she had the Holocaust, tattoo on her arm. And she said, honey, when you're in the mountains, when you see the logging truck, pull over. Is it all right that I'm saying this on your podcast?
Of course, of course.
And then I thought, what is this? And then I look up and it's in Peru, Vermont. It's in the mountains. And so later I learned that Edward Christopher Whitmont fled Nazi Germany. He was making brochures against the Nazis. And then someone like a good neighbor, a Samaritan, right? Like a good Samaritan, right? Like said, get out. And he fled to England or fled to the United States. I don't know what the order was, and changed his name to Edward Christopher Whitmont. But I went to look for the woman after to find out, and she was gone, of course, right? And then, so I flew to whatever the airport is near to Peru, Vermont. I think it must have been Albany, New York airport or something. At any rate, I rented a car. I was a teenager. I never had done this before. And I'm driving, and all of a sudden I saw a logging truck, and I thought, that's interesting. And then I remembered my interaction with this woman. They have those little cutouts on mountain roads where you can let slower vehicles can pull over, and I pulled over, and the logging truck went forward, and so did 3 other cars. And then I was sitting there, and I thought, I wonder how long I'm supposed to sit here. And I got back on the road, like 15 or 20 minutes later. The logs had rolled off and knocked 2 of the vehicles off the road, and I was right behind. I was like right there with it, so it would have been me.
Wow.
So I think that's so fascinating. Some of the other substances, and you can edit any of this out, of course, but
I won't be editing anything out unless you tell me to, because this is pure gold. And if Desiree or anyone said to you, keep it grounded, then they don't know how this podcast works, because we love all of it, because at the end of the day, you want to find the right people that's going to vibe with you. And so that's what it's all about. And I keep saying that with all these different, so many different homeopathic schools. And, I don't think I've told you, but I've just started my own homeopathic school as well. But it's actually the Centre for Homeopathic Education. But I'm just opening a sister school of that in Australia. But, the type of people that's going to resonate with my school, it's going to be different to the people that's going to resonate with your school. And we need all of it. We need all of it. And same with homeopaths. We all practice. So that's why I just feel there's this. It's just so beautiful that we can have all these options for people. And then when we live in our truth, then we attract the people that need us, or we need them. And if we live from that space, everything just flows, and it's so much easier rather than trying to force things.
Exactly. So we have Acer sacrum, which is the sugar maple, and Gavia immer, the common loon. And that one was, the common loon remedy was amazing. So the common loon is a protected species. You're not allowed to have an egg or a feather or anything, any part of it. And I was looking and searching, and I called the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources and Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. And I was trying to find a loon feather or egg or what have you to make a remedy, because my homeopath at one point felt, it would be a good remedy for me to take. And Misha Norland came and did a talk in Red Wing, Minnesota, on bird remedy.
Oh, I love it.
There were these 2 indigenous women from the Loon clan from up north above us and from Canada that came down, and we were, they divided us into small round tables for our dinner. And one of the women had been very, very ill, and she had taken these loon feathers that were collected by one of their friends who had been diagnosed with terminal breast cancer, and she went on one last kayaking trip in Queen Charlotte's Island off of Vancouver, British Columbia. And while she was in the kayak, a loon plucked these feathers out of its wings, and they dropped in the water and floated over to the woman with breast cancer, and she brought them back to her friends who were in this loon clan,
Wow.
right? And so I told them I didn't know any of that. And I told them I'd been looking for these loon feathers to do a proving. And they went home and did their prayers and meditations. And the next morning they brought me a gift of 2 loon feathers. And then we had 5 substances, and the Gavia Immer loon feather was one of them that had been prepared up to a 30C potency, and the proving group selected it,
Wow.
unknown to me. And it was stunning. In the loon proving, a woman had a dream of all these people that go walking down like a wooden stairs to a long dock, and there were all these people stuck in ice water, frozen like at their waist. Well, it turns out that they need like 300 yards to fly. They're not like light boned, they're like prehistoric birds or something. They don't have hollow bone. They need a long runway to get out. So they have to leave before the lake freezes. And so someone was dreaming about that. Many people's eyes turned red from allergies, but the loons have these red eyes that enable them to see in these deep dives where they go down into these lakes. And Gavia Immer, the loon, is strongly related to mercury, because many of loons die from mercury sinkers that are used on fishing poles. And so, at any road, there's so many powerful things, but it's all about the Gavia Immer is in our kaleidoscopic materia medica, is one of these remedies that's akin to Ignatia Amara for recent grief, and Nature Miriaticum for long-held internal grief, and Gavia Immer is for long-term, like hysterical grief. That's like haunting grief. Haunting. And so the loon has a call that is a haunted call. And then we did a proving of Chiledra serpentina, and one of the provers walked into her house, and her husband, she had been a vegetarian, and her husband was frying ground beef, and it was raw, and she wanted to eat. She was like craving the raw beef, in the pan. And she said she was reaching it and grabbing it, just like the Chiledra serpentina. I mean, these are the things that allopaths think we're just mad. How could this be so? But when you're part of the consciousness of the substance, these things happen.
I naturally am very skeptical, and it wasn't until we did a proving of 9/11, somebody managed, I won't say their name, managed to
Yeah.
procure a couple of leaves from this tree. And because it's currently in this memorial, they got some
Yes.
leaves of it and made the remedy, and it was a blind proving, so we didn't know what it was. And
Yeah.
I'm always, any of my staff, like they'll tell you that I'm always like, how does this work? I just don't understand it. I'm in a constant state of skepticism when it comes to
Yes.
homeopathy. Like I'm getting better at just trusting now, but that was my first like oh moments when we did this blind proving. It was a meditative proving. We took the pills, all of us via Zoom were in a meditative state, and I had this very clear visual of me sitting kind of like in the Matrix, just like kind of like sitting, and everything was just white around me.
Mm.
And I'm like, something's just happened. It's the end of the world. And I don't know what's going on. Like literally, it's the end of the world. I'm the last person here, and I don't know what's going on. And
Mm.
I guess it's one of the magical things when you're involved in provings, because actually get to experience that substance. And so then when you do see a client in clinic that you can feel needs the energetic resonance of that substance, it makes it easier to
Yes.
prescribe. But that was the first time for me with my unbelievably skeptical mind, where it was a
Yeah.
blind meditative proving, and I had this image. And then when they said
Yes.
afterwards that it was the survivor tree, I'm like, holy hell.
Yes.
Like that
Yes.
was
It's
pretty
beautiful.
powerful. Quick little question. Do you have any, because I don't know if you've met Roland Gunther, who is in Vancouver Island.
I
You
haven't.
two, oh my gosh, you two will also get along like a house on fire. So one of my superpowers is putting people together that like will vibe. And that's what I've loved doing with this podcast. Hey, you should meet that guy. You should meet that guy. But you two get along like a house on fire for sure. But he does C4 trituration. So he calls it shamia, which I love that he has this different term for it because it really is like, kind of like a shamanistic experience. But, I think something that he's really intentional about is like kind of holding space and keeping that sacred. I know lots of other homeopaths are as well, where there might be a ritual before or after to kind of open the space and close the space because, everyone's in homeopathy world has heard like a horror story of somebody being part of approving and something awful happening to them.
As we're moving into the integral time, you need to remember that past, present, and future are happening simultaneously now. There is a podcast from Lynn McTaggart that Desiree and I have students listen to. And one of the podcasts in that series, they did this study, and I don't have the details exactly on my mind, but I think it was a Russian scientist, and they selected all these heart patients to pray for. And then they had a control group that they didn't pray for. And then they assigned like 8 people for each person or something. And Lynn McTaggart has a book called The Power of 8. And at any rate, they did the work, and then they followed up to see how those individuals were doing. But they didn't tell people that they were praying for people that had open heart surgery like in 1990. Do you understand what I'm saying? They did the study recently, but we're praying for people from a long time ago.
Who were all still alive?
Many of them were still alive, yes. Okay. That's my understanding. Everything arises on interdependent arising. Certain causes and conditions bring the provers, the supervisors, the master prover, the remedy, into that space together because we resonate with it. Our life force needed to have that kind of experience. Now, I'm not saying that with a judgment. I'm just saying that we come together to have this kind of experience, good, bad, ugly. And it's what we make of it, how we allow it to live and move and have its being through us. And then can we allow it to be finished? I'll tell you, when I did the Lux Fora Minus Nigris proving, I actually opened my shirt and told everyone, just imagine that you're putting it all here. I was, of course, studying with Pema Chodron and the Tonglen, and I said, just put all of the unfinished business, just let it all go here. One of the supervisors got so mad at me during that proving. She came and she said, she saw a target in that spot, which is why I did that. And she said she just wanted to keep punching me in my heart, Anahata heart chakra. Wow. And I was like, yeah. So I said, what would that be like to just do that? And then she just burst into tears and she says, I never cry. And I'm like, I get that, but what would that be like? And she said, I feel like I would go through you and become one with you. I thought that was interesting.
Wow.
So sacred interdependence. I think homeopathy teaches us about sacred interdependence. I live homeopathically. I do not believe that we can practice homeopathy in the clinic and live in contradiction outside of it.
Yeah.
The medicine itself knows. The homeopathic medicine knows. And it won't root in split soil. It only grows when you are living, that doesn't mean we can't live with paradox, right?
It's a good distinction to make.
But we need to live in harmony with it in the clinic and out of the clinic. We're not in it for quick cures or perfect cases, and we never know what will happen when we take a remedy. But, homeopathy is a tricky system of healing because many people say, oh, well, this remedy does nothing. I do not believe that is even possible. When the law of contact says that when two things come in contact with each other, both leave traces of each other on each other and are forever changed. And it is that, whole quantum idea of the wave or the particle. We don't know what's going to happen once it goes through the threshold of you. So we're playing the long game, the infinite game, where healing is a lifelong unfolding. The philosopher Seneca said, it takes the whole of a lifetime to learn how to live. And I say, it takes the whole of a lifetime to learn how to heal, and healing can happen in an instant. My migraines went away after one dose of a remedy. And then I was on Q potencies daily I'm still on Q potency. Now I've been involved with homeopathy for 36 years or something.
You only look 36. I don't know how you've done that. Started in the womb.
Meditation, and it's like wrapping up approving like many times. So I work with the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet, and many times, so I did spiritual direction with many of them. I'm also, I do astrology. Many people come to me, astrology and homeopathy. I'm really full right now, but just to say that. But I did astrological spiritual direction with many Sisters of St. Joseph and many Franciscan sisters and Jesuits and rabbis. And I have many Jungian people who come to me, and we do like this kind of ongoing weekly and monthly kind of thing. And what I will say is that we're playing this infinite game, the game of life. It's not this finite thing. It's something that's infinite. We're not in it for the quick fix. So we're not training our students at the Prometheus Homeopathic Institute to chase results. We're training them to cultivate relationships, first with themselves and then with their patients, with the remedy, to respect the remedy. That's how I got here, right? To respect the remedy. And this is where I was going. I was going to laying it on the altar, altar, to be altered, so that when you finish approving, have a drumming circle or a rattle or a big fire pit, and literally or figuratively keep throwing what is unfinished into it. And let it be a vehicle that awakens me. Let it be a vehicle that helps me to continue to grow, and so on and so forth.
That's beautiful. I think we need to have, as a collective, have more of these types of conversations, because it's really come to the forefront of my mind, the power that we have, the potential change with our triturations. And I think that we're not even like scratching the surface yet of what the healing that we can do through triturations and through provings. And I feel we're completely in our infancy yet of realizing what it is that we have at our fingertips and how we can create healing. I really love the element that you've just brought in with kind of just accelerating, karma. And we are all in this cosmic dance with each other. I always come back to, anybody who's listened to the podcast has heard me say it a million times, but that little book by Neil Donald Walsh called The Little Soul in the Sun. That is how I view the world. That is my view of the world. So yeah, I love that. And I feel like everything that you've just said, like it all comes down to if you operate from that space of love, because you've said lots of incredible, mind-blowing things that is just so incredible. I can't even like grasp it, but I feel that everything that you're saying actually comes back to if you just operate from love, it'll all be okay.
Yeah. Well, because when you're operating with love at the center, unconditional loving presence or kindness, you can take what is broken and you can practice that Japanese art of kintsugi, right? Of sealing the clay pot that's broken, or the vessel, the jar, what have you, that's been broken, of sealing it with gold or silver or platinum or, what have you, right? And you can use it, and we can live and thrive. We can move from survival, the brokenness, into broken wholeness. In the book Wicked, or the Broadway play of Wicked, Elphaba says, "I'm tragically beautiful," or beautifully tragic, right? She's green. She's the other. She's from the underworld, right? In the ancient mythopoetic. So our school teaches the mythopoetic, to listen to the words that people use over and over again, because words have meaning. The mythopoetic, in the ancient, where do we see green folk in mythopoetic world? In ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, the beings who went into the underworld, right? That's where the green ones go, right? And in The Wizard of Oz, the Munchkins sing, "She's gone where the goblins go, below, 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 yo-ho," right? So ding dong, the witch is dead. But is she,
It's just so lovely listening to you. I can listen to you all day long. I wonder though, is there a final message that you feel that we should leave our listeners with?
I will say we are looking for students who are brave, courageous, who are willing to do the hard thing, for people who are learning to stop trying to control the outcome and instead learn to trust the field, to read the field, to enter the immersion. We are teaching at the Prometheus Homeopathic Institute. It's an language immersion into the language of the life force, right? Immersing you into the language of the life force, and to learn how to read the life force. And one of the big mistakes that I see many of the people that I mentor, and I started mentoring people who had been practicing for 20 years before me when I graduated from high school because they would talk with me and, and I would say, I would give my thoughts and my feelings. And a lot of it is based on my prayer and meditation and my practices, my dharmic practices. And I would say, because I would see people giving this remedy and then this remedy and then this remedy and this remedy because they're so uncomfortable that the person is uncomfortable. You're amplifying something. Fevers are our friends. The fever comes up to burn something out. Let it do its job. You don't have to change the remedy. You don't have to give an acute remedy every 3 hours, a different one every 3 hours. Give the same remedy, the one that you can see through to pierce through with direct perception, and trust. Trust the field, the space. Trust the homeopathic medicine. This is a core teaching. Also trust the space. This is a core teaching at the Prometheus Homeopathic Institute, not in this lofty or esoteric sense, but in the most practical way of how do we hold space without clinging? How do we name what is real? And how do we work with presence to feel the force, right? And to go with it. And how to let go of needing to be the healer so that we can awaken the patient's inner healer. That's what we're here. We're in this collaborative process to awaken the patient's inner healer. And so if we do our job well, we are also transformed. So we want to be curious more than certain. We want to be relational more than transactional or efficient. We want to be willing to make mistakes. Like, let the patient teach you. Don't be the one who knows. If you know, it's so absurd to think that we know. Give the remedy, be curious, see what happens. But wait. Don't change the remedy because the thing you think needed to change didn't change. Ask them, what's your experience? And if they tell you everything got much worse, wait. Why? Because they're in the midst of something. And if you change the remedy, you're changing the channel. This is part of I have many colleagues who like to give combination remedies or 5 remedies at a time or this one or that. It's like setting your GPS and then asking the car to go all 5 directions, different routes home. I don't understand that. Now, if someone can explain what they're thinking is happening, right? And I come from a world where there are tulkus who are emanations of 5 emanations of one previous teacher. So do you understand what I mean? The one previous teacher will send his speech, enlightened activity, enlightened mind, different parts of himself to accomplish different tasks for our benefit. Wow. So I understand the concept, but what are we doing when we're giving a person 5 different sets of directions? These are questions that I want us to have, these deeper, wider questions and conversations.
That's so why I have this podcast. Yeah. This is what I'm here for, all of that. We need to be talking about all of this.
Yes.
Great.
All right, dear one.
And then also just quickly want to finish off with all the places that people can find you. So we've got Jason-Aeric.com, and that's AERIC.
Yep, and that's JASONAERIC.com. Thefieldprovings.org.
And Prometheus Homeopathic Institute.com.
Yes. And then I have over 50 articles published in the American Homeopath.
Which you're going to put in a book soon.
Yeah, I have to talk to them if that's possible. And of course, I would love to come and talk to your group or whatever sometime, your community.
Look, I've already thinking I'm going to get you as one of our tutors at CHE here in Australia, because I feel that you can add a really deep layer to the school. And if you ever want to pop back on the podcast and share some more insights or challenge us as homeopaths, I think we need to be challenged. I think you've got some really deep questions there that you can ask us and help us to sit with and kind of figure it out. And
I will just say, many years ago, I wrote an article about about the need to come together to write a manifesto, because so often in all around the world, I watch homeopaths running here and there like Chicken Little. The sky is falling, the sky is falling, because this skeptic is coming after us here and there, or someone within our own community says this can cure all things, and then draws attention that we do not need. We don't need that, and so how do we, I'm on fire, but I try to keep it, in this way that's not harmful to others. Yes, so I would like to write a manifesto where we define ourselves and what homeopathy is, which to
Do you think
me,
that's possible? Is that even
well,
possible?
I think we could do it. I think we could do it in the sense of like, I think we need to like, oh, I wish we had another 2 hours. Okay. One of the things that I want to say, like, this is what I want to say. We need to define ourselves from the inside out, even if we don't agree completely on how we do it. So Hahnemann completed 6 editions of the Organon over 32 years, from 1810 to 1842. And so if Hahnemann were alive today, he would be 270 years old if he was born in 1755, right? I'm not good at math, right?
Yeah.
But since he completed 6 editions, in 32 years during his actual lifetime. That's roughly one edition every 5.3 years. Are you following what I'm
Yeah, I
saying?
am. And this is what I've
Okay.
always said as well. Like we would have had a
Yes.
bajillion editions of the organon by
So if
now.
we assume that he maintained the same pace of revision from
Yeah.
1843 till he died, and until he's alive, if he were still alive in 2025, that would be 182 additional years. And at this rate of 5.3 years, he could have completed about 34, 35, 36 editions of the Organon, or 40, around 40 total editions, we could say, right? This is purely speculative, but it's like, what are we doing? And then there are homeopaths who are fundamentalists who think what I'm doing is not like I'm pushing the edge of individuation, unbounded sway, the mythopoetic understanding that every person has their own myth. And how do we live and breathe our myth so that we can be our distinct self apart from our parents, apart from our family, apart from our community, and shine in our wholeness and integrity. So that's what I'm on about. And that's the manifesto I want us to write together.
I'm looking forward to that. And I feel like that's almost like a dream to have to draw us towards once again, that we can get to that place where we can do that, where we can come together as a community and write a manifesto. That would be amazing.
Thank you so much. And if you know any American students that are looking for a school that's outside of the box and very familiar with Pandora's box, which I do have. I do have it here, actually. Pandora's box.
Look, I'm not even surprised.
I'm just saying.
So I don't know if you know, but the podcast is in the top 1% of the world now. And actually 40% of our listenership is in America. So I feel that do you only take on American students or worldwide?
Right now, we're only set up because it's concurrent classes. They're not recorded. But we have had students from Mexico and Canada who've joined us. And we really want to be able to do this. We want people to benefit from my 36 years of studying this and living it. And I'm also willing to, I make mistakes. I'm human, but I have something to say. And I'm glad you're listening. And we have a good synergy, you and I, in the sense of you can bring out lots of my innermost thinking. And it is true. There's so many thoughts and things flowing through me. It's hard. I'm trying to bring it down so that people can understand. Because I've studied Jung's work on the unconscious and the collective unconscious and the shadow. And I've studied Jean Gebser's Structures of Consciousness and Georg Verstein's Structures of Consciousness. And now there's a new young man, Jeremy Johnson, who's talking about structures of consciousness, which are the archaic, the magical, the mythical, the mental, and the rational, and now the integral. So we need to get out of our insularity and bring all these concepts. We need to bridge what we do, which is the three-legged stool of magic, religion, and science. And because that's where human beings live. Thank you, Eugenie.
Such a pleasure, Jason-Aeric. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. I feel like this has been like a healing transmission that has just been sent out through the waves for people around the world to listen to. And I'm excited to hear what feedback you get from this as well. I know that there's people out there listening to this that have really needed this balm for their soul. So thank you for sharing with us so bravely.
Thank you. May any merit gained from this conversation benefit yourself, myself, and all beings without one exception in the 3 times and in the 10 directions.
Thank you.
Thank you.